Hello, my name is Donna McNeil. I'm a herbalist, a naturopath. I do archetypal readings and I give workshops on herbs and the elements. Anyway, today I want to talk to you about archetypal readings. Now, I know I spoke about that in the introduction, and my teacher is the wonderful Barb Stone, and she trained with Caroline Meese, as I said. So what she's done, yes, we all know about the archetypes, and Caroline's book is fantastic. Barb Stone also has a book about the archetypes. Look that up. I wish I had brought that in with me. Anyway, I will link it down the bottom so you can have a look at Barb's book as well. So years ago, I think I was in my 30s, Barb taught me the archetypes. So we went through all the archetypes, and she's actually set it out a little bit differently, and I love the way that she's done it. So in the beginning, I'll just do the layout and we'll see if we can, hopefully you'll be able to follow me with what I'm doing. So first of all, you set out all the archetypes, and there's a picture that shows what the archetypes are, but normally they're turned upside down so you don't know what you're picking. And the first thing you do is you pick 8 cards that jump out at you. Some people do it quickly, some people take their time, and you choose 8. And then you hand that to me, but you don't see what the archetypes are because we don't want to influence your conscious mind. We don't want you excited or disappointed. Anyway, and then you give me 8, and then all of a sudden, magically, another 4 appear, and you have 12. The 4 that do appear is the ones that every single person on the planet has, and that is the child, inner child, the victim, the prostitute, and the saboteur. So they are added. Now, I hope you're still with me. That gets combined into 12, and then there's 12 cards that will that you put on top of the yellow cards, and that will tell you what house it's going to go into. So this is the chart that it goes into. It's astrology, which I don't really do because it's not my strength. But I can see what house it's in, like the house of relationships, communication, all those things. So the pink cards are to say which house that's going to go in. And then there's another 3 cards, and the other 3 cards is, now this is the part that Barb Stone has put in. And I'm keeping this very basic. So it's tribal. Now, tribal is unconscious, and it's fear-based, and it's when you're running with the tribe, like you're thinking like everybody else. The next one is individuation, and individuation is where you're at the crossroads basically, and you start to think, oh, hang on a minute, like what about me, what do I want? You start to question things basically. And then the third one is symbolic. Now symbolic is, it's in your conscious, it's no longer in your subconscious, it's in your conscious mind, and it's love-based, and you're absolutely operating that archetype in the highest good. And so as you go through, it goes into the wheel, it goes into the houses, and then you put the archetypes in, and then you put in whether it's tribal or symbolic. So that way you know what work needs to be done. Now the beauty of having an archetypal reading is that it can help you know where you are in life. It can help you reach your highest potential. It can help you solve problems that just keep happening. It can unblock the issues that you have in the house of relationships. It's really important for that. And the direction in this lifetime, what direction should you take? And then your actually unique potential, because a lot of the clients that I've worked on, there's archetypes that they've had, some of them sort of know they've got them, but others it's been a complete surprise. And so they can actually pick up new skills that were lying dormant that are theirs. And once they realise it, they actually do know that they can work with those archetypes. So one of the things I want to do, so I prepared one earlier. Yes. Now, I'm only going to make this very simple so I don't lose you. So in this archetype, now this woman her life is changing. She's still doing what she knows, but she's branching out career-wise because it's time for her to move into another direction basically. So she came to me to get clarity on what are her strengths and what does she know now, and then also what does she need to work on. Because sometimes we're walking into new opportunities and we're not really noticing what we're doing. You know, there's downfalls. This lays it all out, and it can actually just help you transition more smoothly, which for here, that's exactly, I think that is what's going to happen for her. Yeah, it's actually a really good tool when your life is changing or when you're stuck and things keep going around and around. Now, so that's the explanation of her. And it's so funny because the outer, I'll just do a couple of the key points in here. So her outer archetype that she got in the first house was a square, she's a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't really fit. Now, and she got it in individuation. So I'm going to speak about tribal and symbolic to give you an idea. So if that was in tribal, she would think, I've been born into the wrong family, I have the wrong friends, she just wouldn't fit. And when it's in symbolic, which we're hoping, hers is in individuation, so she's at the crossroads. And she's at the crossroads, so she needs to own the square peg in the round hole. Now, when that's in symbolic, she actually can step into her uniqueness. So because of what she does, this is a fantastic archetype because when it's in symbolic, she is proud to be different. She will step into that individuality that she owns and she will think differently, deliver it differently, but it will be unique and real. And that's what we want. Now, with what this woman's going through, when you cross over onto the house of relationships, she's got the nun, and I cannot tell you how many people get the nun archetype. I don't know what's going on there, but anyway, her nun is in symbolic. So the wonderful thing about that is, because she is in the spiritual world, and her nun in symbolic means that she has a divine connection. She knows she has a divine connection and she trusts that the universe will actually look after her. So that's wonderful. Now let's have a look at some things where she could probably trip up. So there were two that stood out. One was the prostitute in tribal, and you'll hear me talk about this a lot. So the prostitute in tribal is where you sell yourself for approval. So that could be someone who says yes to everything and doesn't say no, or someone who's tired and people are pulling on them and they do it because they want the approval of the person. It can also be the person who's the clown and their life isn't going so well, but they pretend they're the clown because everybody knows them that way and it's a way of approval. Sometimes the prostitute, it can be related to sex. People selling themselves, they're having sex, just to get approval from the person they're having sex with. But in this case, it's interesting that she got prostitute in tribal because she's starting a new venture. So it's wonderful because she has to be very careful now that she's not prostituting herself for approval. Now, the other thing that sits next to that, so that was in her transformation and lessons. Oh, I'm going on nice and red. And next to that is actually the extrovert, and it's in the house of spirituality and wisdom. Now, her extrovert is in tribal. So there's a couple of ways to look at that. But because I know what she's doing, the extrovert in tribal is sometimes she doesn't want to perform. And instead of her saying, I'll do it another day, she's actually is, because it's fear-based. She thinks that she has to do it so that she delivers the goods, basically. But really, she should be doing it when she wants to. So those two together, the extrovert and the prostitute that are in tribal, she has to be careful she's not selling herself, number one, for approval, but also the extrovert in tribal so that she feels like she's indispensable. That's what she's trying to do. Now, opposite those two, this is really good. especially with the work that she's doing. She has the truth seeker. It's the inner her, and it's in symbolic because she loves the truth. She wants that truth at all costs because she can handle it, and she will also speak her truth. And that is really important because when you've got the extrovert and prostitute, and the truth seeker is sitting opposite prostitute, which will dilute it because she'll want the truth and she'll speak the truth, and people will know when she's telling the truth. Because if you're going to put yourself into media, you need to be authentic, you're real, and you need to be yourself. So that was a big tick. Her child's also in symbolic, which means her needs are getting met. What else can I tell you about her? That's probably about it, really. So there's other things in there, and I can waffle on, but I'll probably bore you to tears. Anyway, but this chart tells you that there's key things for her to look out for when she's moving in, and she actually pulled the transition card as well, which delighted me because it does prove that these cards and that we're in alignment for the question that she asked. Now, we normally, when you're shuffling the cards, we do say, tell me what I need to know, so we're not controlling it. But this is about the transition that she's making in life. And it can show her weaknesses and her strength. She also got storyteller. Now, the storyteller is in work and health. The storyteller is in symbolic. So it means that, she'll tell the facts basically, and she's a storyteller. So, it means that she's actually doing the right thing. If she's going to go into media and she's going to be talking about stories and she's going to be doing all that, it's a big tick to say you're on the right path, but you have to look out for the extrovert and the prostitute. Now, the people that know me know this is my chart that I pulled this morning because I just wanted to see, so you can see how it works. And I was delighted by it because I'm not going to prostitute myself for your approval because here it's telling me not to. So I won't. But anyway, it does tell me that I'm on the right path, and I know it's all new and it's exciting, but there's things in here for me to look out for. So I'm going to put that aside. Now, the thing that made me fall in love with archetypes is many years ago, I had this beautiful young woman come to me. I think she was about 27, 28, around there. And she said to me, Donna, I'm happily married. I have 2 children and a dog. We've got a house. She had lots of friends, really good family relationship. And she said, I'm not fulfilled. I'm not. And she said, I should be the happiest woman. And yet, she just felt a little bit like her cup was half empty. And she said, I'm embarrassed by how I feel, but I'm not fulfilled. So I said to her, okay, let's do an archetypal reading to get your cup half filled. But what it was, she actually wanted to know why she was here, which all of us, every single person, and I've had this right across the board, at one stage does say, why am I here? Some people say, how can I be of service? And other people are just service to self. We all know about that. Anyway, now we did this archetypal reading. Oh, it was one of the most joyful things. And in work and health, was healer. I can't remember exactly. I know that one though. Anyway, this chart showed her that she was a healer. It showed her, and animals came up. And the saboteur was in tribal. I distinctly remember that because she was too scared to do it. I thought she would sabotage this opportunity. And we spoke about it. And then I said to her, have you got an affinity for animals? And she said, I love animals more than you can even imagine. And I said, well, have you ever thought about healing them? And she said, well, no, I haven't, but I would love to do that. And she didn't know what she should do. So I said to her, how about you look at massage? You can do acupuncture. It's probably best to start off with massage though, I think. And and I said to her, and you can just do dogs if you like, because she had an affinity for dogs. And then I said to her, but you have to watch your saboteur, because when your saboteur's in tribal, you're going to run in your head, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not rich enough, pretty enough, all that. You know, I don't have enough knowledge, basically. And who am I to start a new business in her context? So when the saboteur's in tribal, you've got to watch that. When the saboteur's in symbolic, you actually go, oh, look, I feel a bit fearful, but it's a good opportunity and I'm going to give it a crack. Like you sort of feel the fear and do it anyway. It's one of those situations. So I've discussed, anyway, so for her, she continued on and she ended up, she's got a very successful business and she massages dogs. She said her life just turned around. She's so happy. And she's actually gone on. Her business was absolutely thriving. And then she came back, I think it was about 2 years later. And, you know, other things came up for her, but now she's doing acupuncture for dogs and... But that sort of example has happened a few times. Now, another example is love. Oh. In the house of relationships, it's funny the people that just can't seem to hold a relationship, attract a good relationship, like they're never healthy. The amount of women that have fantasy and fool's love in the house of relationship is phenomenal. Now, fantasy, these are just examples, but fantasy in tribal, that I've had these women, that's where it's been. I actually have said to them, do you watch a lot of Walt Disney films where the princess, the queen, you know, the prince comes riding in and it's all fantasy and happily ever after? One particular woman, I'll never forget her, she said, oh, my husband just drives me nuts and I'm thinking of leaving him. Now, the chart showed that he actually wasn't the problem, that she was the problem. Did I say that right? He wasn't the problem, she was the problem. Anyway, and she also had fool's love. So there was a couple of things in there. I said to her, do you watch Walt Disney? She said, all the time. I'm obsessed by it, by Happily Ever After. And I said, you know, that's nonsense because no one's perfect. So we pulled that apart, won't bore you with that. And then there's fool's love. Now, her fool's love is that she can see his highest potential. But that doesn't mean he's going to actually get to his highest potential. Because, for example, I'm not at my highest potential. Others can see my highest potential, but I'm not there yet. And some people don't even want to reach their highest potential. So for her, she had both of those things and a few other things that were going on. And at the end of it, she was like, I've really got to do some work on myself. Their marriage improved out of sight because she was the problem and her victim was in tribal. Now, when victim's in tribal, it's everybody else's fault but your own. And then when victim is in symbolic, you actually do realise, hang on, how have I contributed to it? Now, I had another lady who had huge family problems and her victim was in tribal. And you know, she wouldn't have a bar of it. No, my family, they're terrible. And I was like, oh, this is challenging. Don't mind a challenge, I have to say. Anyway, I said to her, just quickly tell me just the basic of what was going on. Then I said to her, you know, you did contribute. And she said, why? And I said, because you were silent. You never spoke up. You played the victim, poor me, and you made it worse because you didn't speak your truth. If you had have said, hang on a minute, let me explain this is how I'm feeling. I was vulnerable at the time and I didn't have the energy, because normally she spoke up, to speak up, and it escalated and got worse. As it escalated and got worse, she actually withdrew more and more and more and allowed all these things to happen. And I said to her, but you allowed that. So therefore, you know, you're retracting. And I know a lot of people won't understand this. But when you do look at that and you think, I did contribute, because I played the victim. I played, oh, poor me, you know, everyone's picking on me. That doesn't work for anybody. Have you ever known that to work? No, you just get kicked more. Once I explained it to her, reluctantly, she was like, okay, I'll take that. So we've talked about prostitute, we've talked about saboteur, we've talked about victim, and now we've got the glorious inner child. So these are the 4 that I was saying earlier that every single person has. Now, the inner child, when it's in tribal, good Lord, it means your needs aren't getting met. And think of a baby. You're throwing a tantrum. You're throwing a tantrum because you want someone to feed you, you want someone to change you, but it's your basic needs are not getting met. And so there's tantrums and all sorts of things that are going on with that. When the child moves into symbolic, your needs are getting met, so you feel safe. When it's in tribal, you also don't feel safe. You just don't. But when it's in symbolic, you feel safe. And you can play and you can see, remember when you were a child and you could see the wonderment in nature, in water, everything was just wow. We all have the inner child in us, and I believe a lot of us, in my chart that I pulled, what was my inner child, was in symbolic. Very happy about that. I actually do feel like my needs are getting met. But I have found a lot in the shop with people coming in and just the conversations I'm having, a lot of people's needs are not getting met. I know there's a lot of financial struggle in the world, but you can meet your own needs, and I would work on your inner child, because if you sit there and you take a moment and you remember what it was like to see the wonderment in the world, like it was just, I can remember that so clearly. So there's other ways of getting your needs met, especially if money is not your God. So they're the 4 archetypes that I want to talk about, and a few examples of what it can do. There's many more examples. I could waffle on like there's no tomorrow, but I will not. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will put up the link for Barb Stone's book because it's wonderful. And also I have asked her to come on, so in a few weeks or whenever, we'll get the brilliant Barb Stone on to talk about archetypes, because she's done thousands and thousands of readings. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. All right, chat soon.